In my hands are two notebooks. This one, unwrapped and empty, sells for about $10. This one is harder to price because it, along with these, contains notes that formed the basis of my doctoral dissertation and first book, and that makes them much more valuable to me. But valuable as it is, I now think that this notebook has two defects as a research tool. First, it's a linear document. It's not good at telling me which pages are related to which other pages. It's not Googleable. And it doesn't show clearly which ideas stuck and which I later discarded. Today, for example, I would have a hard time figuring out when in 2004 I added these bookmarks or why. But the notebook also has a second, more significant defect, which is that its contents are closed to everyone but me. Only I can see easily what's inside. Now, you may think that that's among a notebook's features, not its defects. And in the case of this particular notebook, you may be right. But what would happen if scholars worked to make every part of their research process more public, not only at the point of final publication, but at every point along the way? Not long ago, I read an article in the journal Nature on open notebook science. Open notebook scientists, I learned, keep their lab notebooks totally in the open, often on open source software platforms like GitHub. They share all their experimental data, all their false starts, all their brainstorms, and all their discoveries on the internet, where they can be examined, used, and referenced by anyone. Now, proponents of these open notebooks cite several benefits. Like the open source software projects on which they're modeled, open notebooks promote collaboration and preservation. They have not demonstrably interfered with rates of publication, and one recent study even suggests that open data projects are cited more often. Open notebooks educate junior scientists about sound research methods. They allow errors to be caught and experiments to be repeated. And they make more accessible something called dark data, the results of failed or inconclusive experiments. One lab's trash, after all, may be another lab's treasure. Digital open notebooks also solve many of the other flaws in notebooks like this one. Hyperlinks connect notes that are fully searchable. Version control systems track when changes to notes were made. And blogs and tweets allow readers to see scientists at work. So last fall, I decided to launch a similar experiment of my own. I'm keeping all the notes for my new book project on the history of slavery and emancipation in Texas in an online, open, version-controlled notebook. It's accessible from my website. It runs on a wiki powered by Git, the same software used in the collaborative development of open source software like Linux. Now, why am I doing this? Well, my reasons are similar to those of open notebook scientists. First, historians usually collect more sources and information than we can possibly include in a research article or book. We have our own kinds of dark data that may be useful to other researchers moving on parallel paths. We can make errors that would be easier to catch in the open. And I also hope to find collaborators and interlocutors who can help make my project better. But I find a still more compelling reason to open my notes on the web. I hope it will help communicate better to outsiders what historians do. Many outsiders, I fear, imagine historical research as a straightforward and pretty boring task that goes something like this. You look up or recall from memory what happened, you arrange what happened in a roughly chronological narrative, and you illustrate it with a few choice quotes and old pictures. But the commit messages in the Git repository that holds my online notes tell a very different story. They reveal a contingent and idiosyncratic process in which selection, interpretation, discernment, serendipity, collaboration, context, timing, and associative thinking all play critical roles in the process of a historian's research. I believe our actual research process as historians is one of the best illustrations we have of the central claim of history, that contingency is part of the warp and woof of the world, and that what we can know about the past is limited by the traces it has left behind. Covering up our process leaves people to think that history is just a matter of finding and reporting original meanings or facts which are already settled but not widely known. Uncovering the research process, as an open notebook does, reveals instead that not only past events, but history writing itself are contested and situated in time and place. I'm aware, of course, that my experiment comes with risks. All experiments do. Some might object that putting all your ideas in the open opens them to theft. But to me, this objection is like deciding not to publish one's work at all, for fear it might someday be plagiarized. More importantly, I believe that if an idea is interesting and potentially valuable enough, it's worth taking risks to pursue it. And besides, as I've told my toddler countless times, it's just more fun to share. Thanks.